Hello, everyone, and welcome to Are You Being Gentle with Your Mental with Just the Best? Welcome, you guys, to another episode of Are You Being Gentle with Your Mental? You guys, it is the series Trusting the Process, and today we get to speak to a special guest. I cannot wait to bring her on. But happy Saturday to all of you that are tuning in today. How are you doing today? Are you all being gentle with your mental? Let me know in the comments. Give me some thumbs up. Show some love. If you are, I do hope each of you are very well today. I am in great spirits, and I am so excited to be bringing a special guest on today. Her name is Megan Morgan, and she is just a wonderful person that I just got connected to. And so we're actually going to bring her on now, and let's get this started. Hi.
Hello. Good morning.
Good day. How are you?
It's a good mental health day today.
Put our hands, all hands up if it is a good mental health day. If you guys definitely agree with me and Megan, please put your hands up in the comments because today is a good day in America. Yes, it is. How are you with even living in Sacramento? I know that down here, I'm in Southern California, so It's a little rainy right now. How's the weather going?
It's sunny, it's bright, it's beautiful. There's I'm a little bit outside the city, but if you're downtown or in any of the major urban areas, people are on the streets and cheering and excited, and I know that's small, big part of what we're talking about today, but it's so nice. Virtually, even, I've been on my phone all morning, just seeing everybody's reactions. But yeah, it's a beautiful day to be outside today. I've got my temperature still in Canadian temperature, so it's 16, but I think that's high 50s, low 60s. So
Woo!
pretty nice to be outside.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This series is very special to me because, we're coming together to learn about how you have been trusting the process. Just to provide some context for our listeners, I recently found out about Miss Morgan through a mutual friend, Jill Weston. She's a yoga nidra teacher and out at Elk Grove, actually. And so when I was making my list of who I wanted to share stories with and telling, she connected me with Megan, and I've just been so thrilled and honored to just come and connect with you and let the listeners know who you are and how you've been able to live authentically. If you guys just want to know, this is an author, a gateway yoga teacher, an artist. Please, you guys, give some love in the comments. We definitely have a special guest here. And so let me just a little tidbit. Like I said, she's an author. This is actually her book right here at the end of me. And I would just even love to kind of get into this right now. And can you share the process that it took to give yourself permission to share this story?
Oh, for sure. It's not that long of a book. It's 108 pages, but it took me probably more than 20 years to get the courage to write it. So the experiences that I'm talking about in the book started when I was 19 years old, and I'm in my 40s now. So it took me that long to, get myself together and feel strong enough to tell the story to more than just a close family member or a friend. For those of you who don't know, I have physically died 3 times. And so I wrote about what each of those experiences was like, what I saw, what I experienced, kind of the lessons that I learned about the new paths I needed to forge in my life as a result of that. It was a chance for me to come back each time and be like, okay, I need to change and pivot. And we don't all need to completely change our lives or almost die to make those decisions. And I think sometimes, a greater power just intervenes to make sure you get on the right path, regardless of what you believe. I don't dive into religion, but that there are forces out there that are helping us to get on the path, and whether that's people, like meeting people like you, Jessica, the like hundreds of teachers that I've had and books that I've read have helped me to get on that path and give me courage that my story was worth telling.
Oh, yes. Wow. Just, I'm so thankful that you've been able to trust the process with getting this out there. You guys, please support. You can purchase her book on through Barnes and Noble. If you actually follow her on her page, which will be in the description, you can go ahead and go to her link tree and get this delicious book because it is just great. And maybe I know you mentioned you died 3 times, but can you share a moment in your life that made you feel the most alive?
Oh, oh my goodness. Probably anytime that I've not even so much traveled because I've not actually traveled that much internationally, but whenever I've been really immersed with nature. So I want to say it was 3, and I do talk about this in the book. I'm trying to remember what chapter it is, maybe 7. Um, I went camping, like truly camping for the first time in my life about 3 years ago in Santa Cruz with a group of women that I've met through a group that I volunteer with sometimes called Shakti Rising. And every year they have this retreat where they meet in some kind of remote location all across the country. They've been in Hawaii, California, in the South. And I went to the one in Santa Cruz. And I had never been camping before, not truly. And that was completely terrifying and also one of the most alive experiences that I've ever had. Like, being for 4 or 5 days, I think it was, just in the forest. So there was no cell phone reception. You couldn't do anything on digital media. We were taking classes, we were doing art, we were going for hikes, like just really, it might sound strange, but like really listening to the forest. I had really powerful dreams. Like it's like almost all this stuff was waiting for me to absorb and to be in an environment where my body was willing to accept it, or I wasn't distracted by all the other things going on in the world. So I've since found that as much time as I can spend being outside, even if it's just here, like I said, like I live in the city too, and it could be just walking around in my neighborhood, but just having that chance to breathe fresh air and observe things in nature and see yourself as part of this world and not as something that's separate from it, because we're all living and revolving around this earth.
Correct, correct. And I love that you mentioned camping. I remember being in elementary and I got to go on a trip, and it truly was an amazing experience just seeing the earth that way. And being able to connect really to like the stars and nature is just amazing. If anyone has been camping, please let us know in the comments if you feel the same. I want to know though, I know you before this week of people 3 things that you like to do back home.
Sorry, there's a little bit of cut out there, but I think you were talking about Canada, me growing up in Canada.
Correct. And I was
Is that right?
asking you, yes, how was it? And, some of your favorite top 3 things that you love doing back at home.
Oh, yeah, I lived my whole life from when I was a baby until just 6 years ago in Canada. And we grew up with American television and music and culture. I lived on the border with Michigan, so all our radio stations were from Detroit. So our experiences of growing up are very similar, I think, to American youth. Um, but the big thing about Canada's population, I mean, the population of Canada is just about the same or slightly less than the population of California. And it's spread out over this huge, landmass. So the one thing I've noticed the most about moving here, there's just so much more people. And so that part took a bit of getting used to. When I first moved here, I was just like, it just always felt like I was in the middle of New York City, no matter where I was. And now when I go back to visit Canada, and it's been a while, I'm like, where is everybody? It sort of feels like everywhere feels like it's a small town, even if it's a big city. And maybe Toronto Vancouver, Montreal, those are probably the exceptions because those are our biggest cities. So if you're right in the city, it feels like a typical American city. But I do kind of like that too. It's nice when you go, it's a lot quieter. It just seems like there's a lot more land. You can be in tune with nature a little bit easier. Um, and then the other thing is the accent. I think my accent has become a little more American being here, but Canadians pronounce things differently. And so now when I'm talking to my family and friends back home, or they interview Canadians on television, I'm like, oh, I can hear the Canadian accent. It's hysterical to me now. And when I first moved here, people would be like, "Where are you from?" You know, I'd be teaching yoga, and they were like, "You said a booth, you didn't say about." So the accent is charming, and I believe that the rumors are mostly true that Canadians are really nice. Like everywhere you go, people just want to help, and that's not to say that there aren't bad apples. You know, I definitely experienced racism and other things growing up in Canada. That's a given. But Tirza, hello. My friend Tears is on here. That's awesome. Um, Growing up in that kind of environment, it would be more of a shock, I guess, because you were so used to people being so nice all the time. So when something negative did happen, you're almost like, that's very un-Canadian of you. And it's not like it's not possible. It's just it would be more surprising when it would happen compared to what's happened in the U.S. And if there's anything else, I think that was three things. There's a lot that we have in common, but then there's these little subtle differences. It is really it's like really clean there too. I've had other people say that to me, and I forget until I go home or I go visit family, and they're just for whatever reason there just seems to be less litter, and I don't know why that is. If it's population, right? If you have a third, not even, it's less than a third of the population of the United States. If maybe just less people, there's less littering, but.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I know when traveling, I definitely like to, get some good restaurants and, that are local. What maybe as the best one to go if anyone visits Canada or where you're from on the east side?
Oh goodness. And that's the thing, I've lived all across. So right before we moved here, I was in the Toronto area and we were more centered in a little suburb called Oakville. And there's some great little sushi bento. Was one of my favorites there. Boy, racking my memory with that. Um, when we were living in Calgary, it'd be more like because you're like Montana, right? Calgary is north of Montana, so it'd be like beef places if you eat meat. That's kind of the best thing to get there. I found that the access to fresh food here, that's a plus that I've noticed, and it's living in California, I think, maybe more so than the United States. I mean, the U.S. is known for a ton of convenience food, but my favorite thing about living in this state is that there's fresh food all year round that you just can't get in Canada to the same level. You know, it's going to be a lot more packaged and processed.
And I love that we're discussing food. And I recently actually became a vegetarian this year,
There you go.
with my goal becoming encouraged to be a vegan. But during the pandemic, I know we've been mainly cooking at home. But what are some of your favorite dishes to cook?
Oh, that's my favorite. I realized my husband made fun of me a little while ago, and he's like, "How are you getting into this cooking thing? You don't like cooking." And I said, "Actually, I do. I like it when I have time and I can plan it out and I can chop." It's like when our kids were really little and everybody's going to school, the babysitter, working, and this and that, you'd get home at 7 o'clock and be like, let's make macaroni, like you just kind of don't enjoy cooking. But now, oh my gosh, soups and stews are my favorite thing right now. My husband is kind of king of the grill, so he will put things on there. I am eating meat at the moment, but I try to be as plant-based as I possibly can. I just find that my body functions better, my mind feels better. My favorite thing to eat every morning is oatmeal. That's been a recent thing since the weather has cooled down a little bit, but in summer I love smoothies. And I have eggs occasionally, things like that. For dinners, I kind of like to do a traditional dinner, like roast something, make a salad, have lots of veggies to go with it. mashed potatoes, although I've been substituting mashed cauliflower to try to get more veggies in there.
Those are
and
delicious.
and an air fryer. An air fryer has like changed my life, right? All the
Me
vegetables I already yeah,
yes, to the air fryer, to the creators.
yeah, air fryer broccoli. Oh, I love broccoli anyway, but people used to make fun of me at work because I would bring in a container of broccoli and just steam it in the microwave and have that for lunch, and they'd be like, "Great!" But like, you can sprinkle a little cheese on there, or nutritional yeast. That's another thing. If anyone's like a budding vegan or vegetarian, that tastes fantastic. It tastes like kind of cheese and nuts at the same time, but there's no animal products in it. So
Definitely, I love that you're being gentle with your mental, with how you're eating your foods. And, I definitely want to kind of go back to just even, I know you mentioned you're a wife and you've been married for 25 years.
yeah,
Congratulations. And you
long
have a
time.
family of two beautiful daughters. I mean, I'm single out here. So, what is the secret for a lasting relationship?
It's an interesting question. Sometimes I say that. People are like, how long have you been married? And it will be 25 years in February. But we were together 3 years before that. So it's like close to 30 years. But we met really young, and it almost didn't happen because I said to him, and I remember this moment clearly. We were at school, we were at the university bus stop, and he told me he loved me, and he was in love with me. And I was like, I'm too young. I'm not ready for this right now. Like, come back in 5 years. And he was like, seriously? And I'm like, thank you. Um,
Oh,
and
that's
I
my
just,
brother. Hi.
oh, very nice. Thank you. And I just said, I have this plan. I want to go to school. I want to do this, and I want to travel. And you're the right person, but I just need you to come back in 5 years. and, and so we broke up for like 2 weeks or something like that, and then eventually I just decided, I'm like, that's stupid. If this is my person, then this can still be my person, and I can still pursue my dreams. And hello, um, and he's proven to be that person to support me, as I evolve. He's a corporate person. He has a very steady job, and he's very dedicated in the work he does to support his family. And I'm always the one saying, like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to teach yoga. I want to do all these things. And he just, he stays by my side and encourages me to do those things. That's not his way, but he supports me in doing the things that I want to do. So that's probably pretty key to what has, and that's what we argue about too. So me always having these ideas and new things I want to try, and he's just like, how much is this going to cost? And figuring out how we navigate that together. Hello. Um, and not just making these, we make decisions for ourselves, but if it comes time to like spend a significant amount of money on anything or make a decision that's going to potentially impact the household or the relationship, then we talk about those things and figure it out together rather than just kind of run with it and hope they don't get mad. And then with our girls, I mean, they're grown now. Technically, they're legal adults, which I still can't even, 20 and almost 23. And, I still talk to them every day. We're very close. One just graduated school. The other one is a junior. Thank you. I just actually got off the phone with my youngest. She's a junior. She's an RA. She's, out there living her life. But we see her somewhat regularly because she's only 2 hours away. But they laugh at us. They look at their parents and they're kind of like, how different we are. And they come to us for different things. If they want help with school or their financial aid or their stock portfolio, my husband's actually gotten them into figuring out how the stock market works. They go to him for that because I will be no help with any of that. But if they've written something for school or they want my opinion on something to give them editing feedback, or we need to give this idea, creative things, then they come to me.
I truly love that. I mean, what are some even values that you hold dear to your relationship?
In our family?
Yeah, or even your marriage.
Probably the power of laughter. as much as we are different, we can usually end up laughing about the same things. And when we did Lamaze class together with my first daughter, um, he kind of kept making fun of the process. Like the teacher would say something and he'd make a joke, and I was like, "Come on, be serious! Like we're gonna have a baby, be serious." And the teacher actually said, "No, you know what? Your ability to be able to laugh through what's your husband's
Oh,
number one stock option?"
yes. So my brother Josiah, he has a question, and I know you just mentioned stock, so he wants to know what's your husband's number one stock option.
That I would have to ask him because I don't know, but I'd be happy to get the answer and post it back either on your page or yeah, send it to you as a summary. I'd like to know too because he's talked with the kids about it, and I have no idea. He's got stuff going for me too, but I don't follow any of it. It's terrible. I'm sorry.
No, no problem. We'll get that later from you. And I love what you were mentioning, how just the power of laughter. I feel like during these times, just being able to have humor around one another is just so important. And I believe I heard that, if you laugh longer, live longer,
Uh-huh.
you're laughing. So that's
It's
amazing.
and it's the same with our girls too. Like that's our favorite memories when we're all together at holiday time, and usually once at holiday time and once in the summer. Now that they're so grown, those are my best memories. Like we're just sitting around the dinner table and laughing or watching a movie together that we can all agree on, even if it's like the stupidest thing ever. We can laugh together at what this is. Like those are always. Well, actually, when you asked me earlier, what makes you feel most alive? Definitely that. Just being around my family, even my girls and their friends, like if they have friends over, especially when they were littler, but even now as adults, they'll invite friends over, they're just chatting and laughing in the room. That makes me so happy just to see them having that same experience. It doesn't always have to be with us. So,
Yes, I do see that we have another question here, and my brother is
okay.
letting you know that you can adopt him.
Oh,
You and your husband, so please. Um, it kind of goes back to just the food. I know you were mentioning, but what base are you using for your soups?
oh, so many. So I order, like I just get like a vegetable broth at Sprouts. That happens to be the
Yes.
closest one that I have to me. But there's also, what's it called? It's like a little soup base that comes in a can, and it's like a concentrated. It's a vegetarian soup base. I just can't remember what the name of it is. It's like Smith's or something. But what I've been doing when I roast vegetables and or meat now, I'll make like a vegetable broth and save that and freeze it. So I'm going to make a soup and a stew tomorrow, and I have about 4 or 5 containers of broth, just vegetable broth that I've made. Sometimes there's meat in it, and I save that and reuse it. But otherwise, I just buy a vegetable broth from the store to start with. Lots of garlic, lots of onions, all that stuff. That's more than
All
you
the
think.
spices.
Yeah, like 2, 3, 4 cloves of garlic, 2 bulbs of onions. I just chop it really fine, and like a celery. I love that. My husband hates celery, but if I hide it in a soup, he'll eat it.
You won't even notice. You won't even notice it's there. Inhale all the goodness right there. Yes, that is truly. I love vegetable broth too. That's something I use as well when cooking, like my greens or my collards or kale. I go to definitely my vegetable broth with that. Um,
Especially quinoa, because quinoa doesn't taste
mhm.
like anything unless you flavor it. So it's very handy for that.
Definitely, I learned that very quickly when becoming part of this lifestyle that I had to season to my taste, and I really do. Just like I said, we love food, and I'm actually Haitian, and so growing up in just a different culture of foods and tastes is just amazing. But I love the lifestyle that I'm living now, and I know you mentioned your daughters too, so they're part of like the Gen Z generation.
Mm-hmm.
What are your hopes for this generation?
Oh, to see they could be vice president or president of the United States of America. Let me tell
Yes.
you. I'm sorry to go back to that, but my youngest,
Yes.
it was her first election that she could vote in. And
Yes.
She was like, she woke up this morning, was like, I can't believe my vote was a part of this. You know, that they can do anything. We've been saying that to kids for how long, but really, right? Like, how far has everybody been getting? And representation matters. So I am over the moon, over the moon. But my eldest actually just graduated with a degree in journalism, and she's already working for three different publications, writing and editing and doing the things that she wants to do. She rides a motorcycle. Actually, she's a badass.
Wow.
She loves to. It makes me have a heart attack, but it makes her really happy. And she loves coffee and she loves to travel, and like she's confident doing those things on her own. In the years between when she graduated high school and went to school, she actually traveled to Australia for the summer and backpacked around the country, went to New Zealand with a group of kids, and I was just out of my mind with worry. But in retrospect, I'm so proud of her, you know, that she was able to do something like that. Once upon a time in life, women couldn't do things like that. And the fact that it's kind of a no brainer now. And then my younger one is studying human anatomy, and she wants to do something in the medical field. She's not exactly sure whether it's going to be a doctor or nursing or homeopathy, something like that's something where she's caring, helping to care for the human body. And I'm just like, wow. And she, you know, she can do it. She's good at science and she knows all that stuff. It's a natural fit for her. So I just hope I'm sending them off into a world that is more accepting and more open, and is willing to look at things differently, right? It's not just the same status quo all the time. It feels good to have diverse perspectives and people who grew up with, like, I think we can have different values but still coexist in society together and propel humanity forward, right? As opposed to just everybody just stay in their little corner and you know, do what's expected.
Most definitely. I love that so much about your daughters and just learning about them today. And I know you went to actually grad school in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
How was your college experience?
Oh, it was fantastic. I'm lucky that I did go to school in Canada first many years ago. And then when I started wanting to do more of what I wanted to do, which was art and creative stuff and teaching, I ended up going to grad school in San Francisco for photography and new genres, actually. So I was doing video work and digital media and a little bit of sculpture too. And that, like moving to San Francisco, it was part time for 3 years. So I was back and forth from San Francisco to Toronto. And that was incredible. Just coming to a city like San Francisco, B, in the United States, C, California. And that was the first time where I could actually see myself living somewhere in the United States, even though I traveled to Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Florida, the Dakotas, Minnesota, Ohio. I'm trying to think of all the states I'd visited before, but not spent a ton of time in it. But with California, I was like, oh, I could live here. And even San Francisco, you know, it's still kind of, there's a huge discrepancy between the wealthy and the not wealthy there. You know, it's glaringly apparent, but there's just something culturally in the vibe. And then when you're going to art school, right? And I was on my own. That was the first time that I had not lived with my husband or my family in like more than 15 years, like totally on my own in an apartment and taking public transit. That I could write another book about that on its own. Public transportation in San Francisco or any big city. Ooh, I'm not anxious to do that again, but so many stories, so many stories. And I learned from that too, right? Like when you're taking public transportation every day, that's very different than getting in your car and driving to wherever and you're just always in your little bubble. So when you take public transportation, you know, it's boots on the ground. You're there with everybody else. Um, and so that was a learning experience altogether. And the food, again, I know we can come back to that again. Being in San Francisco gave me access to, you know, being able to just travel up and down the coast. And I was lucky that a lot of my classmates lived, you know, within 100 miles north, south, east, west, well, not west, but of San Francisco. So I could go and spend a weekend in Oakland and spend time with people in their homes there. And then another friend had a farm in Santa Rosa, like literally a farm with horses and goats and dogs and chickens. And so I'd go and do that. And then other people, live down in Alameda, and I just loved learning about all the different parts of this region and this state. So it changed my life. Coming to school in California totally changed my life.
I love that. I know for me too, during my college years, it's definitely changed my life. Can definitely write a whole book on that. But what phases did you, which phase during your bachelor's or your master's or your graduates that you faced the most challenges?
Oh, honestly, I'd have to say it came down to my thesis, so graduating. So and all of my work was about identity politics and the black experience in Canada and the black experience in the United States. And, my mom was actually white, so I was also talking about the quote unquote biracial experience because in Canada it's different. Like in the US, it's the one drop rule. So if you're black, you're black. Whereas in Canada, people would say, "Oh, you're biracial." You're the word I don't like, but mulatto, whatever. And so it was talking a lot about that, like how you're perceived by other people, by other countries, by other cultures, by yourself, how you choose to self-identify. So all my work there's a lot of self-portraits, actually. It was looking at the history of art and Black art in the United States um, and in Canada, and sort of dissecting that work and seeing where I fit into that, where do Black people fit into that. And the hardest part was when I went to do my thesis presentation, right? And you're there and you're about to graduate, hopefully, and you get put through the ringer because your whole class, your professors are there grilling you about these concepts. And because my work was so personal, it feels like they're attacking you. And I came out of that thinking I hadn't passed and I just wasted the last 3 years of my life. And I did pass and it was fine. But in the moment, it felt like they're going to kill me. Um, and it's just because it's hard, right? Doing race-based work is hard, no matter who you are. And so it's getting past that fear of it not being good enough, or you not being good enough, or that it's not worth talking about. That helped.
That's amazing. Definitely congratulations for
Yeah.
trusting the process
Yeah.
and just making it happen. I know we have another question here that I'm going to bring up, but what advice would you give an individual that wants to write a book?
Oh, yeah, just do it. So the hardest part for me is I get all this stuff in my head, and I'm like, oh, that'd be good. Write it down. So whether that's physically by hand or whether you're typing, um, and then just let yourself write as opposed to like editing over what you've done. So sometimes I'll get like, if I was writing another book, which I am, 3 chapters in, like I just go and go and go. Don't worry about if it's a chapter or not. Just write out however many pages or words want to come out, and don't even allow yourself to edit it until like even days or weeks later, because otherwise you start to criticize what it is. You don't need to yet. So, and everybody works differently. Stephen King has said write every day for 2 hours a day, and you just got to be, so consistency is part of it, but also going with, like, when an idea hits me, I'll often wake up from a dream, or if I've been running or I'm working out and I get this idea, I'm like, oh, and I have to sit down right then and let it out, and it might be 3 or 4 hours, and they're like calling me for dinner or saying let's do this. I'm like, I got to get this thing out. So trying to figure out whether you need consistency, like that 2-3 hours a day every day you just write a stream of consciousness, or whether you have to wait till the idea strikes you and then you just sit down and write it then. And then get outside help. Like, you can do your own editing. But for this book, for example, I knew I was going to need somebody who didn't know me to edit this content. I have several relatives who are editors, and I thought, oh, I can get okay, I'll get to that too. I knew I could ask them to read it, but I wanted them to be truly objective about what they were reading and be able to criticize me without knowing me personally and worrying about hurting my feelings. So I hired a editor based out of Ojai that I found online. Her name is Kaidi. And we went back and forth a little bit, and I sent her the first 3 chapters, and she's like, I need to speak to you immediately. Because she was like, the things you're writing about, she's like, for real? And that's her special thing. She is.
Get it, you guys. The first 3 chapters will have you like stuck. Literally, because it
Well,
did
that's what I
happen.
sent her. She's like, send me a little excerpt. So I sent her the first 3 chapters. She's like, can we speak tomorrow? I'm like, okay. Um, and that's her specialty. She deals with philosophical, spiritual things. So I hired her just to edit the book. I was like, I just want your feedback and just to help me round things out. And that took about a year, actually, to finish the book and get her edits back. Then she said to me, okay, one of two things. I could either start shopping it around to big publishers, and she started naming the big publishers, and I was like, ooh, okay. And it's what I wanted to do, but I was scared. She said, but then she also offered me the chance to publish with her. So she owns a small publishing company based out of Ohio. So it was kind of a combo. Um, wasn't truly self-publishing, but it was an offer made through, an editing deal that we already have. But it wasn't what I started out intending to do. So when she offered to publish it for me, it was just, and we're under contract for 3 years. So after that, she's like, if you want to try shopping it to a bigger publisher, or doing something else, then that's fine too. So it was a bit of both. And thank you. I love the cover. Yeah, so Kaidi, as part of our editing deal and her publishing it for me, she set up like a contest online for graphic designers to submit their ideas. And so she got ideas for me. She's like, send me a bunch of photos, themes, ideas, and a synopsis of the book. And I'm going to send out this competition to graphic designers. So they won something for being able to submit. And then we got 12 submissions for the cover of the book. And it was between this one and another one. And then they went back for a second round. It was so exciting. And they went back for a second round of edits based on my feedback. And we ended up with that. So, and when you read the book, the cover makes a lot of sense.
We have to dive into it just a little bit because
Okay.
literally I'm just too happy. But I know you mentioned you died 3 times. Which time was the most, I guess, most intense to you?
Probably the first one. Uh, Only because I guess anything that's the first thing is always the most impactful. It was also the longest that I was gone, quote unquote, in terms of measurement of time, and just in the way that it was. I mean, I drowned, and so it was very, very dramatic. And I can recount that experience with like almost crushing detail. The second experience was through childbirth, through hemorrhaging, through having my second daughter at home. And that experience was much shorter, but the circumstances that led up to it took a lot longer, right? Going through labor and stuff like that. And then the third time was in a car crash. And it was completely different. The thing that I keep emphasizing to people is, on a side note, I'll try not to get distracted. I was listening to another podcast earlier this week, and they were talking about the experiences of near death. And before this happened to me, I had never heard of this. I didn't know what it was and didn't say anything to people for a really long time because it felt really out there and weird. And, the person I was with at the time didn't really believe me, didn't want to talk about it. So it wasn't until I got much older that I realized this happened to other people. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is something I could look into. So I had all these experiences in the first experience that were very similar to what most experience, just the big bright white light and floating towards something. But the other 2 experiences were nothing like that. And in this other podcast that I listened to, people had run the gamut, but the majority of people do have the like big warm bright light and floating towards it. And they did this whole like in-depth analysis. There's apparently 8 million people in the United States alone who have officially reported having a near-death experience. And I was like, 8 million, that's a lot of people, So now I want to find out more about that. I mean, I've been talking a lot about my experience, but I want to know more about other people's experiences and the things they learned. The overarching theme is most people come back with a renewed sense of life and purpose, and something needs to change, and they want to move forward on this path of this life now, knowing that there's a way that they can make a difference, not just in their lives and also in other people's lives. So that was the book. So my fear about talking about this experience and seeming crazy or weird to other people was overridden by, oh, Kelly and Heidi, hello. my fear of writing about this experience and being perceived as nuts was quashed by the fact that this could potentially help other people. And something that Wanda Abney said to me when I was on her radio show a couple of weeks ago, she's like, I'm so relieved to hear this for the people that we know that are in pain, that when they pass over, that there is relief for them. She's like, for me, that takes a weight off. You know, we get sad when people die because we miss them and we worry about them and we want to make sure they're okay. And it doesn't mean that my experience is what's going to happen for everyone, but it brought some comfort to me, especially in that first experience, because I saw relatives who had died before me that I loved very much. And one particular aunt, two aunts actually, who really didn't have pleasant lives or deaths and really suffered a lot. And to see them on that other side in this environment where it was just pure love. And the way I describe it in the book was that it was a singular musical note. Like, even though people were talking to me and I could see and hear things, it was just this, like, being in this perfect pitch of a musical note, and everything was in harmony. And it's more of a feeling, really, than you can describe.
Wow, that is so moving. And just with becoming an author, and you are like, when did you know that passion that you just were like, this is something that I'm definitely like gonna stick with?
To write?
Yes, to write.
Honestly, it started as a child, and I shut it down. Uh, when people start telling you what you should do with your your life. And this morning again, as I was like walking across the house to come in here and do this interview, um, the news was on, and my husband was watching the news, and Christiane Amanpour was on there, giving the latest international update reactions to the election. And I was like, oh, Christiane, she was like my idol as a kid growing up, because she was this international correspondent and she's a writer and, newscaster. But I used to stay in at recess as a kid because I wanted to write my stories and I wanted to draw my pictures. And when I got into high school, people start steering you towards, trying to be helpful. Where do you want to go to school? What do you want to do? And that's what I'd say. I want to be a writer. I want to write. I want to travel. I want to do art. And they'd be like, you can't make a living doing that. You need to do this. And, I would just follow that lead. And I went into journalism school originally. And then my first editor threw a story I wrote in my face because I didn't embellish it enough. He wanted me to lie about the experience that I'd reported on and sensationalize it. And I mean, this is in Canada. Like, it's not like it was some big story. And he just said, you'll never make it in this business unless you're willing to sensationalize it. And I'm like, okay, well, this is not what I want either, right? And so for me, it just came back over and over again and for everyone, right, to think back when you were really little, what's that first thing that really caught your eye, your attention? What did you want to spend your time doing then? Because chances are it's not that different now, but we get taught, unfortunately, sometimes not to follow that dream, and we should pursue a more realistic path or do this and that. And I have to just return to that childhood wonder and passion again and again.
Oh, I love that. Just staying true to yourself. And like we mentioned, living authentically. I know when I went to school, my grandfather wanted me to be a lawyer. And I'm the youngest of 14, so I've always felt a connection to human and the development of it. And so I was like, I want to, learn about psychology. I want to learn about the human mind. I want to teach peace. Like, and I'm here today to say that I stood, grounded to what I believed in. And I'm glad that you did too. And just to see this all come to life now, congratulations. This is so amazing. I can't wait to even hear about the new book that you're writing. Can you even share just a little bit about that right now? Or okay.
Yeah. There's two potentially. I'm still trying to figure out if it's one book or two books. So the father that raised me, my adopted dad, his name is actually both my dads. So my birth dad's name was Ronald and my adopted dad's name was Ronald. So in the book, I call my adopted dad Chester because that was his middle name, because the editor said you have two fathers named Ronald. The reader is not going to be to keep it straight. So we changed that. But in fact, both their names were Ronald.
Wow.
So the Ronald that raised me, my grandfather essentially always had these, he never had passed an eighth grade education. He went off to war when he was just 14 years old. He actually lied about his age because he wanted to get out of the little small town he was living in and see the world and
That was the
fight
same for
the
my
war.
grandfather.
hmm And he learned, like when he got back from war, survived all that, and then spent the rest of his life reading and
Okay.
trying to educate himself. And he knew how to do everything. He could build a house from top to bottom. He could make furniture. He would drive us across the country. He always had like the latest statistics of things in the news and going on in the world because he kept himself so educated. So there was all these little lessons he would teach me in these small ways, and I just started kind of remembering them after he passed away. So just writing about how he came to the conclusions and that advice that he gave me. And then the other track of things I've been writing about is just, and that's the one I'm more hesitant to speak about, but it's more about a history of violence and how we overcome that. And so at this point, it's just about recounting all those experiences of violence, but what the harder part comes to like translating the lesson and growing from that and learning from that. So right now I'm not sure how that one's going to go, or if they're going to somehow come together in one book or two books, or maybe just a long article that maybe I'll submit somewhere. But I also want to just start writing fiction novels. That was actually my first love as a kid, and I would write my stories, and I'd have notebooks and notebooks full of stories. So I have a lot of that in me too.
This is so beautiful. I can't wait to see what's going to be next for you. And just even sharing maybe something is for the next. If we can go back to Gen Z, what do you want kind of advice would you give them now with the future that's a whole ahead of us, really?
To keep speaking up. I honestly believe that the shift that has happened in our democracy is hugely because, and I hate to even use that word, but we owe a debt to the young voters who were committed to speaking out and making change, right? And just saying like, I don't care how old you are. I don't care how you were raised. This is wrong. This is not how we treat people. This is not, just knowing straight out, speaking straight out. Ugh, my hair's standing on end. Like, thank goodness for the young people because they have helped a lot of people who are just stuck in their ways. Well, this is the way it's always been done, and this is just the way it is. And no, it's not good enough. And my kids are like that. They can just call somebody out like that. And so I know that whole age group is doing that. And it's not always going to be in ways that older generations can appreciate because they're used to being like the ones in charge and stating the rules. Yeah, exactly. Gen Zoom, for sure. It's completely making a wave of change across corporate America. I mean, I do work corporately Monday to Friday, and the young people who are just coming in out of university, they come in and they have no qualms about calling things out, saying, like, when's the last time you revamped this? Like, from everything from the way we brand things to the way we're appearing in the world to the way that processes are done. And it's not about a mean thing either. It's not about out with the old and in with the new, but it's like we have to bring these perspectives in. Gen Z is going to be the biggest population on Earth, I think, in about 10 years. So yeah, the baby boomers are not like going to be, and they're not all bad. I hesitate to put anybody in one, group or the other, but so much hope, so much, like the most educated generation right now is going to be Gen Z, and they've seen so much, right? Look how much war they've seen. Look how much unrest they've seen. They've seen 2 recessions already. Like, oh, if there's going to be a strong group, it's that one. So just keep speaking up.
I definitely agree with that. Making sure, they hear our voices is just truly something that I've been pushing. And I want to kind of even share just the perspective of teaching peace and teaching healing. I know you're a gateway yoga teacher, and can you kind of share what that is? Because I think that's actually the first time I've ever heard that.
I kind of I coined it in a way after a class because a student said to me that one time, probably maybe 2 years ago, and he was hesitant to do yoga, but like had heard about me from another student and said, "It's fine. Like, just there's nothing to be intimidated about. Just come to Megan's class. You'll be fine." And so he came. He started to come. And he was always really quiet. And then one day, he's like, "You're like the gateway drug to yoga." He said, "I now feel." So it's thanks to the student, really. He said, "And now that I've tried it, now I want to learn all about it. I want to learn the other things." And but he was so scared to get in at first. It's kind of a negative thing, but he was putting a positive spin on it by saying just this gentle introduction to yoga and how simple it can be. Because people think of yoga and they're like handstands and headstands and twisting yourself, and it's actually not about the poses at all. It's about how you feel in your heart and how you feel in your mind. It's action off the mat. That ties in Gen Z too. There's so many of them. So many young people have come to my classes over the years that are part of Gen Z. They don't think anything of it. They're like, okay, it's a yoga class. I'm going to try a yoga class. They don't have these built up fears about what this is or what someone else is going to think. And I absolutely love the openness about that. So yeah, gateway just meaning like this is the gateway to the experience of yoga for you because it's so big. It's just so big. We tend to teach the same 30 postures or so, but there's actually 8 limbs of yoga and physical movement. Asanas is just one. So there's a whole big world out there. So I say gateway yoga because I just like to introduce it gently to people, and then they can decide how complicated or not complicated they want it to get. And the other way that comes into my life, the group that I volunteer with sometimes called Shakti Rising, they have a program called the 9 Gates of Yoga, and it's custom to them. It's for women who are going through recovery and are looking for a support system. And so they have this specific program that they teach and that I have taught before, and each pose invites you into an introspective part of your life. So you do the pose and you hold it and you breathe, but then you stop and you journal. And so in that sense, it's a gateway towards what does this physical movement and sensation bring up in your body and in your mind, and then you go back into it. So it's less about a flow of movements than it is just about exchanging a movement for a word or making a collage. It's endless.
Wow, I truly love that. Even if you can share, how was your transformation into wellness?
Oh, again, I feel like it's a lifetime thing, but I started doing yoga when I was pregnant with my second daughter, who's now 20. So that's been more than 20 years now. And it's basically about how it made me feel. I initially went because my doctor said I was stressed out and I was working full time and I had a 3-year-old already. She's like, you need to calm down so you can have a healthy pregnancy and healthy baby and the whole bit. And she's like, she prescribed. She's like, you're going to go to these yoga classes. I'm like, okay. So I was just doing what my doctor said, but what the feeling, how I felt when I attended those classes. And I mean, that baby came in an hour and a half. So that was definitely, it definitely provided for a quick delivery or contributed towards it anyways. Um, so yeah, I just believe it can help people so much in every aspect of their life, regardless of we get wrapped up in what the word yoga is and what we've seen in the media. And I've had people who are very religious in one way or the other feel like they can't do it because it means adopting a religion, and it doesn't. Yoga is just about spirituality with self and learning to trust yourself. So when you're moving into a pose, you're learning to breathe. I was telling you earlier that I've been working virtually with a nearly 80-year-old retired Marine. And so we were working together earlier this morning, and I asked him how he was feeling and his body and what about your legs, his typical problem areas. he said, the best thing about this is the breath. He's like, what you've taught me to do is to just be able to breathe. So he says, after our sessions, I feel better just because I've been taking deep breaths for an hour. And he said, if people only knew what a difference that could make and what a big part of yoga that is, right? It doesn't have to be a class. It doesn't mean you're sitting and saying Om, over and over again. It can be that, but it's really about controlling your breath and calming the mind and tuning into your heart.
I love that, the heart space, right?
Yes.
And just, I really thank you for sharing that. I know, we've been pushing these day of healings with the community, and they're all been virtual. Lee, and so we've been able to have like guided movements and guided meditations and healing circles and have those those conversations about pouring back into your own cup and being gentle, right? And a lot of them at first, well, I know I got a few were saying they thought this was a different type of conversation. They didn't know that it would be for them, or they didn't know that they weren't breathing, and learned how to breathe today. And so I just encourage everyone to take that with them and to really start to practice. Really, it's about a daily practice. It's about the consistency, as you mentioned, that you have to have with wellness. And so I definitely love that. I'm gonna have to get into a class or something one day with you. So please do let me know when that's coming up.
My Yoga Audio, if you want to do a headphones in your ear.
Please share with everyone, because I know that's your recent podcast, but what is Maya, just for people to be able to tap in with you as well?
Yeah, Maya stands for My Yoga Audio. So it's an audio podcast, and it's a combination of interviews. So would love to have you on that show as well, Jessica. Just talking with interesting people, and a lot of the times it's been about, like my first guest was a yoga teacher, but her primary focus is on meditation. More recent guests have been people that are dedicated towards self-led. I don't want to say anything because it's going to come out. But the other classes, so I alternate between interviewing and classes themselves. So today's episode dropped, and it's Practicing Yoga Basics 3. So you put your headphones or buds, whatever you have in, and I guide you through a physical practice. But we go very slowly. So you don't have to look at a screen. You just find wherever you want to practice. And I've tried to pace my voice slow enough that you can just listen and move very gently.
I love that.
Yeah.
I truly do. And I know you had our mutual friend Jill Weston on there well too. So that is truly neat, because I even myself with teaching it, I also love to enjoy like others and learning from them. I'm just like a sponge and just want to soak it all up, all the goodness, and just continue to practice and learn how to, be gentle with myself. And I know the podcast is called Are You Being Gentle with Your Mental? So are you? And if so, how?
That's the daily challenge. And what has taught me the most, actually this last week even, I mean, every week I learn something new, like, do I need this in my life right now? Is this I just constantly ask myself those questions, and I know the one thing I need is movement every day. Ideally, it's outside, weather permitting. I know it's not always the case. Same thing with food and drink. Do I need this right now? Do I want this right now? And the hardest one for me, and one of the guests we had on My Yoga Audio was Nicole Carter. She's a licensed therapist, and it's about treating yourself with that same kind of love and respect, and doing mirror work, like looking into the mirror and telling yourself that you love you. She's like, when she started doing this work, she was a single woman with a daughter at home, and was like, I don't have anybody telling me they love me right now, so I need to love myself. And that was a powerful moment for her. So it's, looking in the mirror and being able to acknowledge the beauty and the love and the worthiness and value that resides in you, and then treating your body that way, right? Giving it movement, giving it sunshine, and giving it things that are going to help it to succeed. And then whatever, if you have, I'm not even going to say anything, but you have something that's perceived as bad, or you do something perceived as bad, not judging yourself and being like, oh, well, now I'm just the worst person ever because I did that, and trying.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You say you're trying. I think it cut off real quick.
Yeah, my phone's on low power, so I think
Oh
it might have cut out for a
no.
second.
Okay. Well, I know we're actually going to be concluding our conversation with Megan, but if you guys have any questions or just would like to purchase her book, The End of Me, as I did say, please follow her and hit that follow button today, you guys, and stay connected. She is doing amazing things. And I'm just so glad we had the chance to connect. And I truly do look forward to all the work that you're doing. And I just honor you for you being your most authentic self and sharing that connection with me today. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me. I look forward to having you on the show, so we'll figure that out either sometime before the new year or just after, because it would be great to bring your energy on there.
Yes, most definitely. Well, you have a blessed day and continue to stay gentle with your mental.
Yes, you
And
too.
we will talk soon. You guys, as I mentioned, I'm just so glad that we had Megan today on the show. Please, you guys, she's an author, a gateway yoga teacher, an artist. You guys, please, this woman is an amazing individual. I want you to make sure that you guys go ahead and go into the description and stay connected. But thank you so much again. And if you guys have any questions, make sure you DM us and we'll get back to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining. It's been awesome spending
Yes.
this hour with you.
It is. Thank you, guys. All right, you guys. So that concludes another Trusting the Process interview. I'm just so glad that we got to sit down and have a real conversation today. And I want all of you guys to go ahead and just answer the question in the comments. Are you being gentle with yourself today? And if not, you know that I am rooting for you to go ahead and uplift your spirits and receive the energy that you deserve. And I'm sending all my love and light to you all. My name is Jess the Best, and I'll be seeing you guys soon. Bye.